Would you stay silent if a fallen hero was disrespected? Or would you rise to defend their honor? This story begins on an ordinary day that quickly turned extraordinary. It was a chilly autumn morning at the airport, where travelers shuffled through security lines and sipped on steaming cups of coffee, preparing for their journeys. The atmosphere was a blend of impatience and excitement, typical of any bustling terminal. Yet amidst the mundane rhythm of departures and arrivals, a solemn moment was unfolding, one that would leave an indelible mark on everyone involved. At Gate 24, passengers waited for a flight bound for Denver. Among them was Barron Trump, a reserved man in his late 30s, dressed in a simple navy blazer and jeans. He had boarded countless flights before, but something about this day felt different. As he glanced around the crowded gate area, he noticed a peculiar energy. Some passengers appeared restless, checking their phones and tapping their feet, while others stared out the window, lost in thought. The usual airport buzz seemed muted, as if everyone sensed that something significant was about to occur. The announcement came over the intercom, breaking the uneasy silence. "Attention, passengers of Flight 237 to Denver. Before we begin boarding, we ask for your patience as we accommodate a special processional. A fallen service member will be transported on this flight. Please join us in honoring their sacrifice." The weight of those words hung in the air. Conversations hushed, and a collective pause settled over the gate. Outside the large glass windows, ground crew members stood silently near a cargo vehicle, their heads bowed. Slowly, a hearse pulled up alongside the plane, its sleek black exterior gleaming under the overcast sky. A flag-draped casket was carefully removed and placed on a specialized lift, every movement deliberate and reverent. Barron felt a lump rise in his throat as he watched. The stark contrast between the busyness of the airport and the profound stillness surrounding the casket was striking. He couldn't help but wonder about the person lying inside. Who were they? What dreams had they pursued before duty called them away? How many lives had they touched, and how many hearts were now grieving their loss? Near him, a young mother whispered to her curious child, explaining the significance of the flag on the casket. An older man removed his hat and held it over his heart, his weathered face lined with solemn respect. These small gestures of acknowledgement created a ripple of quiet reverence through the crowd. Yet not everyone shared this sentiment. Just a few seats away, Barron overheard a man in a business suit grumbling to his companion. "This is going to delay the flight. Why couldn't they do this later?" His tone was dismissive, his words dripping with impatience. Barron's jaw tightened, but he remained silent, observing the unfolding scene. As the processional continued, the gate agent approached the microphone again. Her voice trembled slightly, betraying the gravity of her announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, we thank you for your understanding and cooperation. The family of the fallen service member will be boarding first. We ask for your support as we ensure they have the privacy and respect they deserve during this time." Barron watched as a small group of people approached the gate, their faces etched with grief. Among them was a woman clutching a folded American flag to her chest, her steps faltering as she leaned on the arm of a stoic young man in uniform. It was a poignant sight, one that made the abstract idea of sacrifice painfully real. As the family boarded, the crowd remained subdued. Some passengers nodded respectfully, while others wiped away tears. Barron felt a deep sense of admiration for the crew and ground staff who had orchestrated this moment with such care. It was a rare glimpse of humanity in a world often preoccupied with its own concerns. And yet, amidst this collective display of respect, Barron couldn't shake the feeling that the impatient voices he had overheard represented a troubling undercurrent. Were we, as a society, becoming so consumed by our own schedules and priorities that we failed to honor the sacrifices made for our freedoms? This question lingered in his mind as he prepared to board, setting the stage for what would soon become a defining moment on that flight. The atmosphere on the plane was unusually subdued as passengers settled into their seats. Barron found his place near the middle of the cabin, a window seat that offered a clear view of the tarmac. He noticed the family of the fallen service member seated toward the front, their grief palpable even from a distance. The young man in uniform sat with a stoic expression, his gaze fixed ahead as though he carried the weight of the world on his shoulders. As the plane taxied to the runway, the captain's voice came over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. Before we begin our journey, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the presence of a fallen hero on board. Their service and sacrifice remind us of the freedoms we often take for granted. Let us travel with gratitude and respect for those who have given everything for our country. A quiet murmur of agreement rippled through the cabin, but not everyone seemed moved. The same man in the business suit from the gate was now seated just across the aisle from Barron. He leaned toward his companion, muttering under his breath, "This is getting ridiculous. Can we just take off already?" His dismissive tone grated on Barron's nerves. Barron glanced at the man, his irritation mounting. He wasn't one to seek confrontation, but something about this man's callousness felt like a personal affront, not just to the fallen soldier, but to the collective sense of respect that had enveloped the gate earlier. Still, he held his tongue, choosing instead to focus on the view outside the window as the plane ascended into the sky. As the flight leveled off, the flight attendants began their routine service. Passengers placed their drink orders and settled in for the journey. Barron couldn't help but notice the stark contrast between the somber presence of the soldier's family and the mundane chatter of travelers around him. He wondered how many of them truly understood the gravity of the moment they were sharing. About an hour into the flight, something unexpected happened. A woman seated near the back of the plane stood up and walked toward the front. She stopped near the family of the fallen soldier and began to speak, her voice steady yet filled with emotion. "I didn't know your loved one, but I want you to know that their sacrifice means everything to people like me. My father served in the military, and I understand the weight of what you're going through. Thank you for your strength." Her words hung in the air, resonating deeply. The cabin fell silent as passengers turned their attention to the front. Some nodded in agreement, while others wiped away tears. The young man in uniform responded with a quiet, "Thank you," his voice thick with emotion. The moment seemed to ignite something within the cabin. One by one, other passengers began to stand and offer their condolences or share their own stories of military service and loss. An older man spoke about his time in Vietnam, while a young woman shared how her brother had recently enlisted. Each story added to the tapestry of shared humanity, creating a profound sense of connection among the passengers. Barron felt his own resolve harden as he listened. He thought about the man in the business suit, whose earlier comments had so thoroughly offended him. Gathering his courage, Barron turned to the man and said, "Maybe you don't understand what's happening here, but that doesn't mean you can disrespect it. This moment isn't about inconvenience, it's about gratitude. You could stand to show a little more of it." The man looked taken aback, his mouth opening as if to retort, but no words came out. He shifted uncomfortably in his seat, finally breaking eye contact. Barron felt a surge of vindication, not for himself but for the fallen soldier and their family. It wasn't much, but it was something. The rest of the flight passed in relative quiet, the earlier tension giving way to a sense of shared purpose. By the time the plane landed in Denver, it was clear that the experience had left an indelible mark on everyone on board. As the passengers disembarked, many paused to offer final words of support to the family at the front of the plane. Barron watched as the young man in uniform nodded gratefully, his composure unwavering despite the weight of the day. For Barron, the flight had been more than a journey from one city to another. It had been a reminder of the power of respect, the importance of gratitude, and the enduring impact of sacrifice. As he stepped off the plane and into the bustling Denver terminal, he carried those lessons with him, determined to honor them in his own life. As Barron stepped into the Denver terminal, the energy of the bustling crowd contrasted sharply with the solemnity he carried within him. The echoes of shared stories and heartfelt gestures on the flight replayed in his mind, filling him with a profound sense of connection to the others who had honored the fallen service member. But as he walked toward the baggage claim, he couldn't shake the image of the grieving family. Their quiet strength lingered, a testament to the sacrifices made in service to a greater cause. Near the baggage carousel, Barron noticed the man in the business suit again, standing with his phone pressed to his ear. His posture was rigid, his voice low but intense as he argued about a delayed meeting. It was as though the poignant experience of the flight had completely passed him by. Barron felt a flicker of frustration but chose to let it go. Perhaps not everyone was ready to confront the weight of such moments. Instead, he turned his attention to the other passengers who had shared the flight. He saw the elderly man who had spoken about Vietnam shaking hands with a fellow traveler, their conversation animated and sincere. A young mother stood nearby, her child clutching a small American flag someone had given him during the flight. These scenes reinforced Barron's belief that the power of respect and gratitude could ripple outward, touching lives in ways both seen and unseen. As he waited for his luggage, Barron's thoughts drifted to his own life. He had always considered himself an ordinary man, moving through the world with quiet ambition and a focus on personal goals. But this experience had stirred something within him, a desire to contribute to something greater, to honor those who had given everything for freedoms he often took for granted. An idea began to form as he retrieved his suitcase and made his way to the terminal exit. Perhaps he could volunteer at a local veterans organization or participate in events that supported military families. The thought filled him with a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. It was a small step, but it was a start. As Barron hailed a cab, he noticed the young man in uniform and the grieving family exiting the terminal. They were met by a group of people holding signs and waving flags, their faces lighting up with empathy and support. The scene was a poignant reminder of the resilience of the human spirit and the power of community to uplift those in pain. The cab driver struck up a conversation as they drove through the city, commenting on the heavy traffic and the crisp autumn weather. Barron responded politely, but his mind was elsewhere. He thought about the small moments on the flight, the words of the woman who had spoken up, the collective silence that had enveloped the cabin, and even his own confrontation with the impatient businessman. Each moment felt like a thread in a larger tapestry, one that spoke to the enduring value of respect, gratitude, and shared humanity. When he finally arrived at his hotel, Barron felt a sense of quiet resolve. The journey wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning. As he unpacked his suitcase and prepared for the week ahead, he made a silent promise to himself to carry the lessons of this experience forward, to honor the sacrifices of others through his actions, and to always remember the power of a simple, heartfelt gesture. In the days that followed, Barron found himself reflecting on the flight often. He shared the story with friends and colleagues, each retelling a chance to emphasize the importance of gratitude and respect. And while the world outside continued to rush forward, filled with its own chaos and noise, Barron held on to the quiet strength he had witnessed on that autumn day, a strength that would guide him in ways he had yet to discover. Months later, Barron found himself reflecting on that day at the airport. It had started as an ordinary journey but had turned into a profound lesson on gratitude and respect. The memory of the fallen soldier's family stayed with him, a constant reminder of the sacrifices made for freedoms he often took for granted. He couldn't forget the solemnity of the moment or the courage of the grieving family. Inspired by that experience, Barron decided to channel his feelings into action. He began volunteering with organizations that supported military families, offering his time and resources to help those who had given so much. He attended community events honoring veterans and even took part in a mentorship program for young people considering military service. One evening, while speaking at a local event, Barron shared his story about the flight. That day taught me more than I could have imagined. It showed me the power of respect and how a single act of gratitude can bring people together. We owe it to those who sacrifice everything for us to live with purpose and to never take our freedoms for granted. His words resonated with the audience, many of whom approached him afterward to share their own stories or express their gratitude. For Barron, it was a fulfilling way to honor the memory of that fallen soldier and to ensure that their sacrifice was never forgotten. It wasn't just about that one day anymore. It was about a lifetime of living with gratitude and respect. As Barron reflected on his journey, one thought remained clear. Gratitude is a bridge that connects us to one another, transcending differences and reminding us of what truly matters. That day on the plane wasn't just about honoring a single soldier. It was about remembering that each of us has a role to play in building a more respectful and compassionate world. To you, our listeners, I ask, how do you honor the sacrifices of others in your daily life? Perhaps it's through a small act of kindness, a moment of reflection, or simply saying thank you. Every gesture counts. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your perspective in the comments below. Have you ever experienced a moment that reminded you of the importance of gratitude? Let's start a conversation and learn from one another. If this story resonated with you, consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more heartfelt stories that inspire and connect us. Together, we can build a community that values empathy, respect, and shared humanity. Thank you for being a part of this journey.